Hello and welcome to From the Be All End, the Burnley podcast. I'm Andrew Greaves and joined by Darren Bentley tonight and somebody who is making his first, I think, appearance as a guest on the podcast. We have obviously seen his wonderful tash and certainly a lot more hair than I have. Nathan Rogers on
Connor Roberts is joining us for a minute.
He looks it, doesn't it?
Nice. It's coming on. I'm liking it. I'm trying something. Call it a midlife crisis, but I'm just trying something.
Getting a head start on Movember. But yeah, Nathan, lovely to have you with us. I know you've contributed to our rapid reaction and debrief with the kind of post-match videos. We are, of course, looking ahead to Sunday's game against Wolves. Big opportunity for the Clarets, as Scott Parker mentioned in his press this week, to try and get some momentum, try and get build on the positivity of the Leeds result, and get back-to-back positive results in the Premier League, which obviously at this stage of the season is a bit of a would be a nice little kind of spike, if you will. We're also going to talk about the fans forum. Chairman Alan Pace met with the fans at Burnley College for one of his kind of annual get-togethers. Scott Reed from Radio Lancashire on microphone duties there. Find out what the chaps thought about that and the question and answers that came up from that. And also we'll probably touch again on Keeping the Faith, which of course is the club's little mini-series that is going out exclusively on X, which used to be Twitter, of course, before Elon Musk decided to burn everything to the ground. But let's start with a look ahead to Wolves. Daz, as Scott Parker mentioned in his presser, back-to-back wins in the Premier League are difficult. Away wins in the Premier League, if you're a promoter club, are difficult. But this does feel like an opportunity, doesn't it? With Wolves playing as they are, getting results as they are, the pressure is on them. It's got 0-0 written all over it, hasn't it?
You're right, though. Back-to-back wins are gold dust in this league. We found that a lot under the previous managers, that you can sort of rack up 2 wins. It doesn't have to move you up the table because you only play 1 game a week. If you don't win for 2 or 3 weeks, or 2 or 3 games, it's a month down the line, isn't it? Before you know it, with these international breaks. But yeah, it does give them a great chance, I think. Wolves will be jittery. There's no doubt about it. They haven't won a game yet. They keep going behind in games, early in games as well. And it's given them a mountain to climb. And I think we touched on this last week. Our resilience at the back, our newfound resilience, we've conceded quite a few goals this season, but the newfound resilience we found last week, where Steve was back to his best, I think if we can keep it nice and tight for half an hour and get the front players in the game, then if we get the first goal down there, all bets are off, aren't they? He's under pressure down there, make no doubt about it. He's under pressure. So I'd like to think we'd come away with something from Wolves. I'd like to think we'd back up last week's result, let's put it that way, and at least keep our head above water, which is the aim, I think, and keep moving towards that 1 point a game.
Yeah. And Nathan, Chris Borden always says, get his noses in front and we have a chance. And I think, looking at some of the comments this week, I think Quillinshire Hartman basically said we never felt like we were going to concede against Leeds. We felt like once we'd gone ahead, we were always going to see that out. It does feel like that to Burnley, doesn't it? It feels like when we've perhaps gone behind in games, we've been quite good by and large at getting back into Man United and things like that. Yeah. But if we get his noses in front, it almost gives us that belief that all we need to do now is defend, get bodies on the line, bodies behind the ball. Are you looking at that kind of, as Daz suggested, pacifying the crowd for 30 minutes and then trying to get his noses in front, and that kind of gives you a real opportunity of picking something up?
Yeah, I think like a team like Wolves, they sort of fall into a similar category of Leeds at the minute. It's they're quite toothless in front of goal. I think Leeds had the huff and puff, but ultimately the sort of that final finish just wasn't there. And I think we're going to see a similar sort of trend against Wolves. I think they've got a lot of quality players, which again Leeds did, to be fair, but Wolves have got a lot of quality players. But I think they're just lacking in a lot of confidence. I think that team has just been dismantled sort of season on season and then not replaced with the appropriate talent, and I think it's just coming to a head. I'm not pinning them for relegation. I just think they're just having a bit of a tough time because what they've lost is they've not replaced. And like you say, I think going there, stinking the place out for 20 minutes, sort of letting them have possession like we did against Leeds, concede possession, let them try and break us down, let them be toothless like they have been in recent games. And like I say, I'm saying all this, and Wolves haven't won a game all season, and in rolls Burnley. So, I've been a Burnley fan long enough to know probably how that script ends. But, I think go in there, stink the place, like Daz says, for 20 minutes and just frustrate the fans, get the fans riled up, because I think if they lose against Burnley, I think this might be curtains for their manager.
Yeah,
I don't want us to sit back, by the way. I don't want us to be negative. I want us to get on the front foot early doors there. I think getting on the front foot makes a crowd nerve even earlier. But, keep the back door locked, as Dyche wants to. Keep the back door locked. And if you get Jaden Nance on the ball, and we get, I think we'll probably have Loom on the right, you'd imagine, rather than Jess, than Brun. So get at them from the off. I would, definitely.
Yeah. And Daz, I mean, looking at kind of how Scott Parker might wish to set up, obviously we abandoned the 5 at the back. And, I think that coincided with Maxime Esteve having probably he's one of his better games this season. I've not been convinced necessarily with him in a 5. Do you expect Parker to stick with basically what we set up with against Leeds? But I agree with you, perhaps Loom Chowner coming in instead of Brun Larson. Do you think the kind of pragmatist in him might kind of go, well, let's go back to the back 5 because we know that's going to be the most solid back line?
No, I think the first. I think there'll be a time and a place for the back 5, and I think that might come back when we play Arsenal in a couple of weeks' time back at the turf. Try and keep it tight because you can't go toe to toe with those sides. But against Wolves, no, we need to win. We need to go to win that game. With the aim of winning it, and that means having creative talent on the pitch, and that means sacrificing a defender to get somebody further up the pitch. I think Ogochoku's shown real promise in that 10 role. To be fair, moving forward from midfield. So I don't see any reason to change that at all. Cullen can keep the door locked to the back there alongside Florentino. Get that one change on the right would be the one thing I'd change. And I'd probably stick with Fleming up front for now. I think Foster can be a plan B if he's fit.
Yeah. Just on Fleming, Nathan, I mean, he's a different kind of player to Lyle. I mean, Lyle drops deeper and likes to kind of, pick the ball up and run. Do you think Fleming offers us something a little bit more, which then perhaps will unlock a Chowner or an Anthony wide? Because he's a bit more of almost a Barnes character, isn't he? He's kind of all elbows and backing in and you just kind of think if you can get a bit of traction up there and spread a ball wide for either one of the fullbacks coming on or one of the kind of outside right or lefts coming in, do you think that's what Scott Parker will look at in terms of, Fleming didn't score, but we're not used to strikers scoring, but I actually think he improved the way we played against Leeds.
Yeah, I agree. I think when I watched it, obviously I didn't watch the full game back in its entirety, but for most of the game, sort of Fleming was sort of pushing right on the edge. When we were sort of driving forward into the attacking third, he was occupying a centre half, which is, if you're not gonna go and get a goal in the game, you need to sort of bring something to the table, and I think he occupied a centre half really well against Leeds, and it allowed. I think the Chowner goal was a prime example of that. The centre halves were occupied, that they couldn't step in and engage because Fleming was being a little bit of a nuisance, not so much as Barnsley used to be and was when he came on for his cameo, but he was just a presence. He was in and around people's feet, and like I say, I like it's a sort of a modern day striker thing, sort of like a false striker now. It's if you're not going to score, is can you give somebody else the opportunity to score? Not necessarily via an assist, but by being a nuisance, occupying a defender, just pulling someone into space, freeing somebody up. And I think it was really effective. And I won't say I'd be disappointed if he didn't start against us, but I think he's deserved a chance to have a go against another team that are desperate for a win. And I think defenders can overthink things at times when they've got a striker like that that's a bit of a menace and a bit of a nuisance.
He's not a sniffer, is he? He's not a sniffer of goals, I think, Fleming. He's one who'll knock a thunder bastard in from 25 yards, isn't he? Or a header from 18 yards. And probably the nearest we have to a sniffer is actually a winger, Jaden Anthony.
Yeah.
Who just gets into those little pockets of play and nicks a goal here and there. So,
it's a good thing with Fleming. He's big, he's a big lad and he's a big fella. He's got a lot of upper body strength, and if defenders don't engage with him, he can drop off and find a bit of space. And like you say, before you know it, he's belted one in from 20 yards out. So he might not be a poacher, and sniffing stuff out, but they they can't ignore the fact that he couldn't just pop off into a bit of space and welly one in. So yeah, it was positive, and I'd like to see it again. I think against Wolves, I think it's the right time to deploy that against a team like Wolves in their situation.
Yeah, and Daz, just touch on Chowner. I mentioned this in our group, and I did put it on Up the Clarets, but didn't get much traction. Chowner has 3 brothers who are also professional footballers. Haroon, who plays in the Maltese Premier League, and then 2 of his brothers who are twins, and get this, called Frank and Frankie. I kid you not. Frank and Frankie Chowner both play for Enna in Serie D. He looks a real talent, doesn't he? I mean, he hit the post, I think, against Liverpool, hit the crossbar with a free kick against Forest, hit the Thunder Bastard against Leeds. He looks a bit, he still looks raw, doesn't he? He still looks all kind of pace and excitement, but there's clearly a player there in Loom Chowner, isn't there?
I think so, and I'm going to nick Chris's joke first, where he said he should have had a brother called Tinner.
Exactly.
Copyright Chris more than that one. It's like a Chuckle Brothers joke, wasn't it? Yeah, he's still growing into his skin a little bit, isn't he, Loom? I think he's maybe flattered to deceive in a couple of games, but he's still, having seen Jakob Brun-Larsen last week, and he's still the best option we've got on the right wing, given the fact that Marcus Edwards seems to be completely out of the picture. And that's a strange one in itself, that Marcus isn't getting any game time. I know he didn't pull up any trees in the Carabao Cup, but the Premier League's a different kettle of fish. And I know a few people who I know who watched him when he was at Spurs and said, "You've got a talent on your hands there." Yeah. We're just not getting the best out of him at the minute. So Loom's the best option, I think. There, pace, bit of power. We know he can slam one in the top corner. We've just seen that. So he has to play there for the minute, I think. I don't think there's any option. Then, maybe Brun-Larsen's your last 20 minutes option if we need him. But I like what I see of him. He's raw. He's very raw, but you can see there's something there. And that's, Alan Pace touched on this at the forum of the night, didn't he? And reinforced what we all know anyway, which is that we haven't got the £50 million to go out and throw on a ready-made striker, winger, defender, / midfielder, insert where applicable. What we need is to bring in players who are either been there and done it and they're on the way down a little bit, or players who are on the way up and we can improve them. And then it's up to the manager and his coaching staff. And he seems to fit into that latter bracket, and they seem to like what they see of him, and quite rightly so. I think he's shown real promise so far. He's got his first Premier League goal under his belt. The kid must be buzzing.
Yeah. Are you surprised, Nathan, how much we've seen of him? I think when he came in, I think in our kind of WhatsApp groups that I'm in, we were kind of a bit like, well, he's quite a young lad. We're probably not going to see him. But he's kind of had a bit of a run, hasn't he? He was kind of, out the side against Leeds, come back in, give the manager something to think about. Are you, obviously has good pedigree. He's been at Lazio. He scored in the Champions League against Ajax, I think it was last year. Clearly a player there. But are you surprised at how quickly we've seen him integrated when you do have someone like Brun-Larsen, who it kind of felt like, Brun-Larsen, experienced player, played in the Premier League last time, was going to be the one that's ahead of him?
I think from an ability level, I'm not surprised. I think more of a sort of footballing experience, sort of on the pitch management thing. I am surprised he's getting as much time as he is, but he's riding the storm really well. Like, this is all you can ask for from these players. Is you've provided them with a chance to, these lads have had, Premier League footballers plastered on the bedroom walls, haven't they? So this has been their goal, is to play in the Premier League. It doesn't matter what colour shirt. I mean, it's just the reality of it. It doesn't matter what colour shirt they've got on. These lads want to play in the Premier League, and we're just lucky enough that they're doing it in a Burnley shirt. And he's come on, and he's just taking his chance, and he's giving everything. For the first time in a Premier League season in a while, we're seeing lads again that are just coming off like shattered and even deflated if they lose, and like they want to win. The will to win is there, and I think Chowner is like the epitome of that. Like he was on the bench, and against Leeds, he's been brought on, and he's done what he's done, and he's almost said to Gaffer, "Don't drop me again." You know what I mean? He sort of said to him, "Don't drop me again, because I work hard. I run up and down. He does work hard. And he's putting him away like that. And like Daz said, he's been teasing that. Doing that, hasn't he, for the past few games? Like he's, knocked a couple of pensions out in Bob Lord, trying to hit them a few times. It's been coming, and it says hit the bar, and it's just refreshing to see these young lads that are hungry, and they're not just chasing a wage packet. They're actually, just performing on the pitch as well. And like I say, long may it continue from Loom, because he's going to have a great season if he carries on at this rate of improvement as well, because it's game by game, he's getting better and better and better.
Yeah. And Daz,
Nathan makes a really good point there, actually, because I think this is a team, we've touched a little bit on it before. I think this is a team that you can fall in love with as a Burnley fan. You see these little snippets off the pitch and that we can talk about, but you see them on the pitch and they're a band of brothers. It does seem like you can really get behind this team. We've had a couple in recent years where we haven't felt that way. So, we've got to ride that story. You're right, Nathan. We have to ride it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And is there something, Daz, in the makeup of the team? I mean, we often look, you look at the success stories of promoted clubs, Wolves in the past, Bournemouth continually, Brighton, Crystal Palace, where they pick these lads up. And we've often talked about the maturity of the recruitment process over the last few years, from the kind of, chaos of the company era recruitment, and which was kind of AOK going a little bit too Moneyball, to a maturity which mixes raw talent like Chowner, players who really shouldn't be playing for Burnley like Florentino, Ugo Chukwu, who's looking for a home. Do you think, we're almost mimicking what those successful teams who've got a foothold in the Premier League, your Bournemouths, your Brightons, are doing, either on a, slightly smaller scale? I don't think we've paid anywhere near perhaps their fees, but do you think it's that evolution of recruitment where we feel comfortable in our skin, actually going, you know what, sometimes you need the odd old head, Kyle Walker, Martin Dubravka, but that allows us to be a little bit more fanciful with a Hartman, a Chowner, Florentino, whoever it may be, Ugo Chukwu?
I think it's easy to look at templates for teams who've done that. You can forget your Cities and your Liverpools and your teams who blow people out of the water. But your Brightons, your Bournemouths, Brentford, those kind of teams who have had a really solid reputation for bringing in players in recent years who you might never have heard of, unless you're an exponent of European football, and just honing them a little bit. But you've got to do it your own way. You have to do it your own way. I mean, each recruitment team will have their own methods. I'm sure they're all using very similar software, and there's a lot of data-led analytics now that will lead you towards probably the similar sort of players. But it's the right way to do it for most teams, because they can't throw £60 million at it. We touched on this before. When a transfer window opens, business always gets done in the last 3 or 4 weeks, because the pragmatism of clubs is you're waiting and waiting and waiting. Unless you're Liverpool and Man City, you can throw a wad of cash down and get your deals done early. You're all in that same little pool of players, and then it's just you either pick up gems or you pick up people who'll move on. That's what matches are. And this is how it works. It won't be any different for Burnley, I don't think, for years to come. This seems to be the ALK model, doesn't it? Very data-led. Bring in young lads, improve them as players. Wilson Odebert, sell them on for a profit. Stable with the next, and there's no doubt he'll be out the door in 12 or 18 months, I'd imagine. But we've always been that way, Burnley. We've never been any different. I remember the 70s team getting dismantled, and the 80s teams. Well, not the 80s teams, because no one wanted them. But
they were all on the downers when they came in, weren't they? To be fair, most of them.
But the 70s team, the Marty Dobson stand, the Bob Lord stand, and all these players that came through, the Leighton James off, for record fees. We've got right back in time. We've always done that. And although the difference is now it's all very data-led and probably not scout-led, same principle really, isn't it?
Yeah, and it does kind of fit in, doesn't it? I mean, like you say, we used to be fishing in Belfast and the northeast. Now we're kind of fishing in, the lower reaches or mid reaches of Serie A and the Portuguese leagues to a certain extent, and looking at kind of players at Premier League clubs, who are waiting for that next move, like Ugo Chukwu.
The world's a smaller place, isn't it?
Of course it is, exactly. And like you say, I was chatting to a friend the other day. He was listening to Steve Bruce on, I can't remember which podcast he's on. It's the one with Nicky Butt and Paul Scholes, and he was talking about how Stan Turner discovered Harry Maguire, basically, and brought him to Hull. And it was like I remember, looking around a property that Stan was working on for his late son Chris, and he was on the phone to Bruce because he'd been to south of France scouting some lads over the course of midweek, and it's nowadays you don't even need to leave East Lancashire, do you? I mean, we've seen on, I think, last year's documentary. They've just got these massive jumbotrons with the data on and videos popping up. It's a
Laptop
crazy
and a
world,
software.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
laptop and software. That's all you need.
Yeah, definitely. Let's move on to the fans forum. So Alan Pace, as he did last year, sat down with Scott Reed from Radio Lancashire at the fans forum at Burnley College. Again, slightly disappointing turnout, given the fact that we kind of crave getting answers. Daz, those who did attend perhaps didn't get quite the answers that they wanted. I think at one point, Mr. Pace, the Burnley chairman, said he would invite, and I'm paraphrasing, would invite Clive Holt to his house, but not into his bedroom, when he refused to answer a question from Clive, who was the longest-serving Clarets board member until he resigned. It has been a major frustration, hasn't it, Daz, this cloak and dagger nature of the takeover and the finances. And Pace said quite a lot without saying very much, and basically said to Clive Holt, basically once dinner's done, you're out the door and I'm not getting, you're not seeing me underwear to a certain extent. Do you think... I'm trying to phrase this in a way that's...
I haven't had my tea yet. Do you mind? I haven't had my tea yet.
I know, sorry. I know the thought of Clive Holt and Alan Pace, apologies to both gentlemen, in kind of skimpy underwear at Alan Pace's house isn't something we need to be listening to. Do you think it's right for the Burnley chairman answering a question from a Burnley director who knows club finances and was kind of the money man for many years really on that board, when it came to kind of capital and revenue spending? Is it right for a chairman to be able to basically go, we ain't going to talk about it, we said we weren't going to talk about it, you've just got to trust us, I'm comfortable, everything's rosy in the garden?
It's an odd one. I mean, it's been from day one. There's been concerns about the leverage buyouts, hasn't there? And to constantly not talk about it just keeps it in the conversation. It almost feels like they'd be better talking about it and getting it out there and getting it done with, because you just keep this wound festering away in the background. And just to shut it down a little bit and say, you'd all be delighted if you knew about it, but I can't tell you about it, isn't probably going to placate a lot of supporters, especially not supporters of the demographic that were in the audience that night, because they're all sort of 50, 60-year-old Burnley fans who've seen us come through the hard times, and now we've got a bit of money, or have we got a bit of money? We had no debt, but now we have a bit of debt, but how much debt do we have? There's a lot of questions hanging in the air there, and the chairman, for whatever reason, just deflects them and won't talk about the finances. And I don't think we'll ever find out, to be fair. I don't think it's one of those things that we'll ever find out about. The accounts are out, and that's what they'll point towards, I suppose, but the accounts, unless you're financially savvy, just are a jumble of numbers to a lot of people. So I think you can hide a lot of facts in there. But listen, it's not easy being a chairman, but if you're going to have a forum, I think you should at least attempt to answer the question. Yeah.
And Nathan, I mean, we're recording this on the day that Sheffield Wednesday, one of the world's oldest football clubs, has gone into administration. I'm not for 1 second suggesting that ALK or anything like the absolute shambles of an ownership. And I don't think, I genuinely, as much as we've criticised the leverage buyout and ALK, never would I suggest that I don't think, Alan Pace has the genuine interest of Burnley Football Club at heart. Is it a worry? I posed this question on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. The longer it goes on, the longer we don't go bust, the longer we kind of, everything's rosy in the garden and the accounts kind of show, well, there's a bit of debt. Do you think it becomes less of an issue for Burnley fans, and does it become less of an issue for you?
I don't know. I'm always in two minds about this. I've got like sort of the modern football hat on, and then I've got like the deep-rooted Burnley fan that, my granddad had still, let me cling on to, where it's like Burnley or bust sort of thing. But I think, the to the point where he didn't really go into detail. I think it's frustrating, but I get it, because if they have done some sort of accounting wizardry and trickery and little hidden loophole, like why would you why would you show your cards to the rest of the table? Because it's not just the fans that would see that, it's other clubs, isn't it? So I get it if they've done some sort of magic or wizardry with the numbers. It's for far smarter people and brighter people to think about than me and worry myself. But I think the grand scheme of things, like I say, I think they do have it in hand. It's just the way that a club our size is going to have to operate. I think that's the sad reality. It's a bigger picture and a bigger podcast for another day about football finances in general. I think that's the only way that we get to sit at the top table is by doing these sort of leveraged loans and whatnot, and selling, buying low, selling high. I think it, and fair play. Like I've had my critiques of Alan, and I've got my complaints and gripes about the direction of where he wants to take the club sometimes, but he does have the best interest at heart because, like he said, I think there's a quote in there. Someone asked about one of the directors making a joke going, "We're going to make loads of money." And it's like, it was very out of context. And I remember it's a very sarcastic comment. And Alan was like, everybody knows, like say, what's the quickest way to become a millionaire if you're a billionaire? It's buy a football club. And it's like, so he's not in it for, obviously he's going to make some cash, but he's not in it to be rolling around on big bales of dollar bills, is he? So I think it's ticking along nicely if we stay in the Premier League. Again, every time I talk about this, I always have to caveat, after I do my little rant, I always have to then go, if we stay in the Premier League. So,
yeah.
We've done a great job bouncing back, haven't we? We've done a great job bouncing back, but the questions remain, what if we don't bounce back for a couple of years? And not just the parachute payments dry up, but the players have gone because you've had to sell them off to pay the family. So, that's where the questions come in, I think.
That's where all the problems come as well when the clubs do go down. It's never the first season that's the issue. It's always the second, it's always the third. And we've thankfully not had to be in that position over the years. We've always bounced straight back up since Dyche first took us up, in this sort of current era. And, we have got very, I wouldn't say fortunate, we've made our own luck, haven't we, in times. And if they continue to do this, then there's no concern for me. But like I said, the massive asterisk in the room is just if we stay in the Premier League, because that's where your pot of gold is.
Yeah, and staying in the Premier League obviously is going to be the, you do kind of think it's imperative now for a promoted club to stay in. The last two seasons, all three have come back down. But if you stay in that Premier League for that, you get over that first season, by heck, you've got half a chance of them being able to push on.
Yeah. And even more.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say even more so, like, say we do break this mould and 3 new teams get relegated, like they've had 3 years of 120 million going into the bank account. So that championship is even the bridge is going to get extended even more. So like people are saying it's a good thing that all 3 stay up, but it's like, is it going to be a good thing? I think the gap's going to get even bigger because the 3 teams that went down are struggling in there as well. So then you add in, say, a Wolves and a West Ham, it's just, that pot, the gap's just going to get so monstrous. It bears thinking about sometimes.
But I don't know how you do kick on. A club of Burnley isn't kicking on by staying in the Premier League. It's standing still a little bit. It might be inching forward, but we had 4 or 5 years under Sean Dyche in the Premier League. As soon as you get relegated again, that money dries up and the players move on, and you're back to square one a little, because your percentage of wages to ratio is in the 70-80%, whatever it is. Yeah. It's not like the old days where you're paying people tuppence halfpenny. You're paying a lot of your money that comes in now out in wages. So you're inching forward, and you only take one bad season and you're back where you started. That's the real worry, I think.
Yeah. Simon as editor will hate this because I'm going to reveal the Leeds West Ham score as we're recording, so it's live. But if you listen to this Saturday morning, it may be double or 3 times. But Leeds are 2-0 up already, 15 minutes in as we're recording this against West Ham.
Ouch.
West Ham look a bit like Wolves, look like an absolute certainty at the minute for relegation. Maybe that task gets slightly easier with 2 sides who just look rotten. Both them sides look a little bit like Leicester did when they went down under Van Nistelrooy last season. Really is. A couple more bits in the fans forum before we move on to keeping the faith, which of course is always the message that Alan Bates gives us. Mike Trezor is alive and well. Alan saw him, and he was doing very well in practice. I hate it when they call it practice.
But no more than that.
You've got to speak to Scott about it. It's the coaching staff who make the decisions. I don't think we'll ever find out about that. I'm tempted. I keep seeing posters in Tombadin for UFO meetings. I'm tempted to go because I think the answer to Mike Trezor might lie in one of these meetings at the Golden Lion, the upstairs room of the Golden Lion in Tombadin, because there's no other explanation for Mike Trezor at this stage. And of course, he also addressed the situation in the cricket field and the exiting and things like that, and basically said it was less of a safety issue and more of a fan experience issue. You can, of course, if you've got 90 minutes to spare, watch all of that and get very little detail. But fair play to the chairman for doing it, especially on the back of his comments that he wasn't perhaps welcomed with open arms when he came to Burnley, like he was at Espanyol, which of course is his new toy to play with. Moving on, finally, we'll penultimate topics. I do want to just touch on Sean Dyche right at the end as well, and his moving to Nottingham Forest. Keeping the faith. I think we've spoken quite a few times about how much we enjoy this little series, and I think this series is even better than the last series because it's much shorter little episodes. Daz, I mean, I think we've cried out on these documentaries for a bit more dressing room footage, haven't we? We've been wanting a little bit more of, what's the manager about, what the discussion's about. In the latest episode, we saw 2 clips of Scott Parker, the one that's been widely trailed on X with him saying, they've come into our home, we've got to give them every bit of us, go and give them a fucking game, etc. And then we saw the half-time bit where he talks about, I've been here, I've felt it, I've smelt it. We've got to start the second half as we started the first half, dominate them. It's one of them things, again, where you kind of look at that and go, bloody hell, we are lucky to have Scott Parker as manager.
He's a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde character, isn't he? Because you look at him on the sidelines and he doesn't look like he'd say brew to a goose. But you get him in that animated sort of enclosed dressing room amongst fellow men, and he's lung bursting and his veins are coming out, and there's a passion in there that comes really roaring out, isn't there? I like it. I like to see that. It's really good. It's something we went out back when I was at the club. We tried to do a little bits and bobs like that, but Sean, for whatever reasons, wouldn't entertain it, so we could never get near this kind of access that Ad Hoc Films or whoever it is they're putting these Gotland, I think it is, are pulling together. The nearest we got was kind of, Nathan was there at the time, I think, as well, was we got a studio set where we had a sort of studio show, and we'd have Dyche, we'd have Graham Alexander, we'd chat to people. That was about the most access you could get at that stage. Yeah. Now, of course, with the world of YouTube and Alan's come in with a lot of thoughts on that, it opens up the whole door. And every manager that comes in there probably has to buy into that in some capacity, and that helps. But it gives everyone a little window into the club, doesn't it? And it's fantastic. It really is. It's really good to see those little snippets. Yeah. And the fact they let the camera in the dressing room, I know they probably still have a full carte blanche on what goes out, and some of that stuff will find it's on the cutting room floor. But it does give you that little insight, and I think we've got an absolute nugget of the manager. You can just see that passion in him, can't you?
Yeah. Yeah. And Nathan, one of the things that always strikes me is that dressing room is packed. It's not just the players who are playing. It's your Bashir Humphreys, your Zeki Amdounis, your Mike Trezor. They're all there. They're all on the pitch at full time. They all come down from the director's box. There's, I think we said earlier, it's a team you can fall in love with. It's a team you can get behind. But it is the togetherness we see in the clips that the club put out. They're not just filming them clips and saying, "Hey, our lads, just pretend you're mates for a bit and we'll do." There's a genuine kind of everybody in the dressing room. And Scott Parker, if you're injured, you're in the dressing room. If you're not picked, you're in the dressing room, etc., etc.
Yeah, I think it helps having someone like Scott Parker. I think he's a people person, isn't he? I think I'd go on a whim and I'd say first and foremost he's a people person, and that's a massive hurdle if you can, because you've got an absolute a melting pot of cultures, languages, attitudes on things, and having the people person that can get it and mash everything together, I think is really, really, key. And I think Daz, you said it on a pod a few weeks ago. I was saying it's sort of like Dyche plus, it's like Dyche gold. We're just getting, because Dyche never had to sort of deal with a dressing room of so many nationalities and cultures and differences. He just sort of was very much a bit of a British Isles thing, and that was fine. But to have all these characters and all the additional pieces as well afterward around it, looking at it, like the Bashirs and your injured players, and yet they still keep coming back to celebrate with the team, and it just speaks volumes of Parker the man. And like I say, I'm happy to hold my hands up. Like, I've done a complete 180 on Scott Parker, and I think he couldn't be any more perfect for our football club. Like, really, he ticks every box for me. You know, he's tactically fine. His attitude's good. He speaks well. He's such a good politician when he needs to be. He puts his arm around lads in the public when he needs to. I couldn't really be happier with him at the minute. He's ticking every box for me. Yeah.
He's not a manager who's ever going to give you any problems, is he? It just feels like he's 100% behind the project.
Yeah.
Definitely. That's that P word that we always hated. But just finally, we'll just kind of finish on Sean Dyche, just because he's obviously taken over at Nottingham Forest. Ange Postecoglou lost his job within either 18, 19 or 21 minutes, depending on who you were reading or listening to, last weekend after their defeat to Chelsea. Sean swiftly in kind of expected fashion, working with his old mate in kind of air quotes, Mr. Marinakis, who obviously shafted us in the European event we had. But Daz, I mean, you obviously know Sean quite well, having worked with him at Burnley for a number of years. It feels like, a bit like perhaps when Eddie Howe went back to Bournemouth. It feels like a good fit, doesn't it? I mean, the chairman is the obvious kind of, potential problem at Forest. But for Dyche, it feels like a club he knows well, an area he knows well, an area where he spent a lot of time. Do you expect Sean to go in there, turn it around? He's got a win midweek in Europe and really kind of get them firing again like they did last year under Nuno?
Yeah, he'll do exactly what he did at Burnley, and he'll do exactly what he did at Everton. He'll put sweat on the shirt, as he says, the old maximum efforts, the minimum requirement, all those things. He's playing the right tunes with the fans straight away, which you have to do. You get the fans on board, and you dip into the Forest forums, and it's all about, blimey, a man talking about our club like this. It's not about me, it's about the badge. And you get the fans on board straight away, you create something. Remember he said that about Burnley when he came in, he said that the disparity between the expectation levels of the fans and where the club were was way off, and he needs to try and alter that kilter. He's probably got a little bit of a problem with that at Forest in a minute. He needs to just, like, Forest fans maybe getting ahead of himself a little bit and they're having a bit of a struggle. He'll just bring them back down, but he'll equally get sweat on the shirts. He'll get them working. He'll get the fans behind them. And before you know it, they'll be climbing that table. I don't think Forest will be pulling up any trees this season, but already you saw on Thursday, Gibbs White probably ran more on Thursday than he had in the previous 3 games. He is a magician when it comes to that kind of thing. He's a people person as well, by the way. Behind the scenes, he'll have had everybody in one-on-ones. He'll have tailored plans for everybody, as a lot of managers do these days. But he has this reputation as being a sort of a gruff, one-track bully, if you will. But he's highly intelligent, highly motivated, highly planning. A lot of it behind the scenes, Forest will benefit from him, no doubt about it.
Yeah. And I think, Nathan, the Premier League benefits from having Sean Dyche in there, doesn't it? I think we miss that kind of, his interactions with journalists. I mean, he rolled out his Brian Clough impression, which I don't think he's quite as good as Mark Crossley's, I have to say. But he got Cloughie off quite well, to be fair.
Yeah.
But the Premier League needs characters. And as much as I like Ange Postecoglou, his kind of Aussie mate kind of shtick kind of wears thin a bit like Mourinho did in the kind of latter years. But Sean's a proper football manager, isn't he? A proper football man.
Yeah. Like I say, it couldn't have been a more appropriate hire in this current situation for Forest. I don't think he's probably the most Brian Clough-like manager, not necessarily in terms of accolade. I must caveat that I'm not comparing Brian Clough and to Sean Dyche, but in terms of character and charisma and them little taglines that can be passed on, like he's come out with loads at the Burnley, where he's like, in press conferences and his phone pings and he's like, yes, we've signed Messi, and it's like, he's clever, he's funny, he's witty, he knows how to diffuse, he knows how to stir people up. I think he'll be a really good fit, and frustratingly for us, it's like, that's just Forest out of the picture. I think now that's fundamentally it. Seeing Dyche go in there, I was like, I'm happy for him to see him landing a proper, decent job, but I'm also like, shit, that's another one. That's another space, another team out of the way that we can't really match. So yeah, I think all the best to him. Just felt right, didn't it? Forest and Dyche back together, and good luck to him.
Yeah, definitely. Good luck to him until we get down to the City ground for the reverse fixture, of course. But let's leave it there. Thank you very much, chaps. Thanks for joining us, Nathan, for this episode. I believe Simon is back in the presenter's chair on Sunday with reaction from Wolves versus Burnley. Until then, and wherever you're watching it, enjoy the weekend and up the Clarets.